up a sec. I gotta catch my breath. Okay. Well, this might not be as easy as I thought. We're in the same boat as the other evacuees now. On foot to a train station. Let's head for the surface.
This is another multi-purpose scene. First, Alex is visibly shaken, which once again humanizes her. But she also states the player's goal for the second half of the game: climb to the surface and get to the train station.
Careful, I hear turrets. Blind as a bat without that flashlight on. We need to get through that door. Get this open. Let's see if we can find a power box. That smell can only mean zombies. I've heard stories about you and your dogs. You and Barney used to compete to see who could get in fastest without using a key.
Before we armed players with traditional weapons, we wanted to give them a chance to appreciate Alex's combat abilities. Toward that goal, we created a very specific combat style for the early parts of the journey outside the Citadel. Dark, tense, surrounded by zombies, and either weaponless or starved for ammo, so that players needed to rely on the gravity gun, and more importantly, Alex. This is where players finally get a weapon. Since the door only opens when the padlock is shot, players can't proceed without finding the pistol. It's effectively a weapon gate. Once players are through the door, we can be sure they've got a pistol.
Originally, the player couldn't operate the power boxes, and would have to wait for Alex to do it. We thought it'd be entertaining to watch Alex do some cool thing while you protected her. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. Playtesters were more annoyed than entertained. The other problem was that having Alex committed to a particular activity while action was still going on in the world tended to quickly expose her most robotic tendencies. She'd either ignore what was going on, or completely stop whatever activity the player was waiting for her to finish. Either way, it was unconvincing and frustrating. What we learned here was that whenever Alex commits to some action in a dynamic environment, she needs to finish it quickly and move on.
Nice job! Hey, and you found a gun. Keep your eye on that zombie.
The darkness in this area has a few real gameplay benefits. It slows the player down, which most of the time keeps Alex at your side. The claustrophobia, the close-in combat, and Alex's constant presence and reliance on your flashlight help enhance the tension and your sense of camaraderie. The darkness in this area has a few real gameplay benefits. It slows the player down, which most of the time keeps Alex at your side. The claustrophobia, the close-in combat, and Alex's constant presence and reliance on your flashlight help enhance the tension and your sense of camaraderie. In the dark, the limited flashlight battery adds an extra layer of resource management to the tactics of combat.
This is another.
More of them coming.
Before we armed...
Originally, the
darkness in this area.
Initially, the player wasn't going to have a weapon here. The combination of no weapon and near total darkness forced the player to use the flashlight to direct Alex's fire. We liked the idea that you could interact with Alex in a meaningful way, using elements that were already built into the interface. Unfortunately, playtesters didn't like not having a weapon, so we added weapons back in. Luckily, it turned out that, even armed, players tended to still use and enjoy the flashlight mechanic.
Light that thing up! Antlion's here? The Combine's defense field must have collapsed. I can't see a thing. I'm blind as a bat without that flashlight on. We need to get through that door. Hey, an air duct! I've heard stories about... You and Barney... I can't see a thing. I'm blind as a bat without that flashlight on. We have to get through that door. Hey, an air duct! I've heard stories about you and air ducts. Dr. Kleiner says whenever he locked himself out of his office, you and Barney used to compete to see who could get in fastest without using a key.
Original.
We found a gun.
Initially, the player wasn't going to have a weapon.
Antlion's here? The Combine's defense field must have collapsed. Makes sense if it was powered by the Citadel. Gotcha. Looks like we found a troop train.
If you don't like Alex, you're not going to have much fun with Episode 1, so Alex being likable was one of our most crucial design goals. Little moments like the Zombine joke are designed to make Alex more endearing. Since we like to multitask, it also had the practical purpose of introducing a new monster. The success of the scene relied on a combination of dialogue, voice acting, and animation. Surprisingly, lighting was really important too. Under red light, Alex's self-deprecating groan looked more like she was sneering at the player for not getting the joke. Changing the lighting to blue and then adjusting the direction of the light so that it changed the shadows in her face fixed the problem.
We've really got to talk to Dr. Kleiner about getting a new battery for that flashlight.
It's important that monsters get very deliberate introductions, since players are going to interact with them a lot. Generally, we let the player first see a new monster in a safe environment, so they can start thinking about it before they have to fight it.
What the hell is that? A Combine zombie. That's like a Zombine, right? Zombine, get it? Okay. Crap! Look out! It's got a grenade! Let's go.
The soundtrack here was created for the introduction of a new adversary, the Combine Zombie, or Zombine. Discordant guitar tones and bends, and a lo-fi fast beat work in the background of this encounter to create an off-balance and disturbing mood.
We always try to exploit a feature as much as possible throughout a game. For instance, these flares. They're an exploration reward, they've got a simple, satisfying interaction with the gravity gun, and they're a good tactical alternative to the flashlight. Finally, they're a weapon that will ignite zombies, which, in turn, become a new light source.
Keep your light on that zombie!
For Episode 1, we implemented a scripting component called the Response Rules System for dynamically managing NPC speech. We wanted to take NPC speech out of the hands of the programmers and let the writers control it. The writers were able to set up a wide range of situationally triggered character responses. For instance, Alex has different reactions to different enemies, can warn the player of danger, calls for help when she's mobbed, and will ask for light. The combat responses worked out great, but it's especially satisfying when Alex's comments on some situation mirror your own thoughts. The writers really went crazy with this, so be on the lookout for lots of little Easter egg responses to unusual situations.
Shine your light on that.
Poison headcrabs are ideal for ambushes because they startle you but can't actually kill you. Here, after a series of right-hand turns, you round a corner into a dead end. While you're cracking open a box of goodies, you're ambushed by poison headcrab. Constructing the ambush this way increased the odds that you wouldn't see the crab, but you would hear it just in time to turn around as it leapt at your head.
The antlion hole training is unusual because it requires the player to learn a new skill in combat. This is a rare case where training occurs under duress, so Alex states the problem and helps in the fight without giving away the solution.
Shot if you knock them over, Gordon.
You fight alongside Alex for much of episode 1, so her combat really needed to look varied and exciting. We especially wanted to get her into some kind of convincing physical contact with her enemies. We'd always wanted to do this kind of dynamic character interactions, but getting the NPCs into position for their interactions has a pretty wide-ranging set of problems. So we ended up taking an opportunistic approach for episode 1, where instead of figuring out how to maneuver characters into proximity, the system monitors their positions and fires the appropriate animations whenever it notices that they're correctly aligned. Given how well these interactions worked out between Alex and zombies, headcrabs and antlions, we're really looking forward to extending this kind of behavior to all of our NPCs. You fight alongside Alex for much of Episode 1, so her combat really needed to look varied and exciting. We especially wanted to get her into some kind of convincing physical contact with her enemies. We'd always wanted to do this kind of dynamic character interactions, but getting the NPCs into position for their interactions. You fight alongside Alex for much of Episode 1, so her combat really needed to look varied and exciting. We especially wanted to get her into some kind of convincing. You fight alongside Alex for much of Episode 1, so her combat really needed to look varied and exciting. We especially wanted to get her into some kind of convincing physical. You fight alongside Alex for. You fight alongside. You fight alongside Alex. You fight alongside Alex for much of Episode 1. You fight alongside Alex. You fight alongside Alex for much of Episode 1, so her combat really needed. You fight alongside. You fight alongside. You fight. You. You. You fight alongside Alex for much of Episode 1, so her combat really needed to look varied and exciting. We especially wanted to get her. You fight alongside Alex for. You fight alongside Alex for. You fight along. You fight along. You fight. You fight.
This 3-level parking garage is where the antlion burrow training pays off. Because we've taught the player the burrow blocking mechanic earlier in a less hectic environment, the problem here becomes not what to do with the burrows, but where to find the cars to block them while fighting off a horde of antlions. The burrows themselves went through several iterations. At first, playtesters had a hard time seeing them, and once they'd push the car onto one, they often weren't sure if the hole was actually sealed. We eventually solved both of these problems by adding a particle effect to the burrows. This effect makes them recognizable even at a distance, and its absence is a clear indication that the burrow is blocked. This 3-level parking garage is where the antlion burrow training pays off. Because we've taught the player the burrow blocking mechanic earlier in a less hectic environment, the problem here becomes not what to This 3-level parking garage is where the antlion burrow This 3-level parking garage is where the antlion This 3-level parking garage This 3-level parking garage is where the antlion burrow training pays off. Because we've taught the player the burrow blocking mechanic earlier in a less hectic environment, the problem here becomes
We generally design and prototype the basic gameplay in a level before we apply much art to it. Throughout the first several months of playtesting this garage map, the geometry was nothing more than basic shapes and textures. After we finalized most of the gameplay elements, we began to flesh out the visuals for the area. For this level, we left the office and took reference pictures of various garages. From these shots, we pulled out everything we liked and that we thought we could pull off well. We combined these visual highlights into what we call a style guide map, which is a standalone map with no gameplay that we use strictly as visual reference. For this level, we actually made 2 style guides, one a destroyed garage, the other intact. After the look was established, we brought the playable map's visual quality up to the level of the style guides. Often a map's geometry needs to be changed as the art goes in because areas that worked in the abstract version no longer make sense in a map that now looks like a real place. For instance, the side rooms where 2 of the cars are hidden were moved several times in order to make them feel more naturally part of the parking garage.
lucky you've got that hazard suit. This water's nasty. That room for two in there?
Episode 1 is our first project to use HDR lighting heavily in dark indoor environments. The interaction between the flashlight and the auto exposure calculations done for HDR presented a real technical challenge. In dark areas where the flashlight was the only source of illumination, we found that we'd often end up with grossly overexposed views. We ended up compensating for this by using a different set of exposure parameters when the flashlight was turned on. In particular, we drastically shrunk the region of the screen examined for exposure calculations, which permitted us to concentrate only on the much smaller area lit by the flashlight.
This area is the dramatic culmination of all the lightless combat that comes before it. We wanted to create a dynamic fight that lasted several minutes.
I would have settled for stairs. You've got to be kidding.
I've worked with electricity a time or two, and I'm pretty sure the sparking wire must be connected to a power supply.
This area is the dramatic culmination of all the lightless combat that comes before it. We wanted to create a dynamic fight that lasted several minutes while we waited for the elevator to arrive. The first iteration of this battle was very different from what we eventually shipped. The space was larger, had water in it, and wasn't completely dark. Water is relatively expensive performance-wise, so we cut that in favor of more zombies. We made the level smaller to ensure that the player would see the elevator and recognize the problem that needed to be solved before the fight started. We killed the lights both to enhance tension and to make the scene a final test of the dark fighting skills that the player develops over the course of the episode. Finally, we added a wire running along the ceiling from the elevator to the power box to give players a guide as they familiarize themselves with the area.
In early versions of the episode, Alex was much more vocal about giving the player hints. However, playtest showed it was much more satisfying for the players when Alex stated a goal and then stepped aside until that goal was accomplished. Because of that feedback, almost all of Alex's hint lines were cut. Eventually, though, we discovered through more playtesting that although players didn't like having Alex hand them unsolicited hints, they did want to be able to explicitly request help from her. So we added some of the hint dialogue back in, but it's only accessible at the player's request by Plus using Alex. Unfortunately, we learned these hint lessons late in the development cycle and didn't have time to properly train players for this feature. We plan to integrate the hint-on-demand dialogue more thoroughly in future episodes.
Our art and gameplay standards encourage players to build a visual dictionary that defines how they expect things to work in the Half-Life world. For instance, even though the door to the power box room is metal, and would probably have a metal crossbar holding it shut, we barred it with a wooden plank. Because we've been consistent throughout the game, the player should recognize that a wooden plank can be both broken and manipulated with a gravity gun, properties that wouldn't be immediately apparent about a metal bar. Our art and gameplay standards encourage players to build a visual dictionary that defines how they expect things to work in the Half-Life world. For instance, even though the door to the power box room is metal, and would probably have a metal crossbar holding it shut, we barred it with a wooden plank. Because we've been consistent throughout the game, the player should recognize that a wooden plank can be both broken and manipulated with a gravity gun, properties that wouldn't be immediately apparent about a metal bar.
Grenade!
We're really happy with the Zombine's grenade behavior. It adds sudden danger spikes to the zombie horde, which force players to quickly reprioritize the targets. And since the player can grab a grenade out of the Zombine's hand with a gravity gun, these danger spikes can be converted into offensive opportunities. This kind of turnaround skill shot creates some dynamic, satisfying hero moments for the player.
Was that you?
Originally, we didn't allow the player to snatch Zombine grenades because we felt it broke the fiction of the gravity gun. If players could grab a Zombine grenade, why couldn't they? We're really happy with the Zombine's grenade behavior. It adds sudden danger spikes to the zombie horde, which force players to quickly reprioritize the targets. And since the player can grab a grenade out of the Zombine's hand with a gravity gun, these danger spikes can be converted into offensive opportunities. This kind of turnaround skill shot creates some dynamic, satisfying hero moments for the player. Originally, we didn't allow the player to snatch Zombine grenades because we felt it broke the fiction of the gravity gun. If players could grab a Zombine's grenade, why couldn't they grab the Combine soldiers' guns? After playtesting the grenade steal though, fun won out over consistency.
Come back! Hey, I hear the elevator. It's moving again. Oh, and here comes trouble. Light that thing up! Still light out.